Okay, we're back. We got the cylinders and pistons in, and how I always do this, you'll need piston ring compressors. Make sure your piston rings are orientated right. Now I noticed on the S&S kit, it doesn't really tell you, at least this one didn't, how the rings are orientated. You get your oil rings and your spring. The spring goes in between the two thin oil rings, and there should be some kind of mark indicating up. If there's a M or an N, mine had an M on it, and I looked up the S&S website, and it said the chrome faced ring goes to the top, which this is your top ring, and then this is your second compression ring. The one that is not, which would be the only one left, is not chrome faced. That's how I knew how they were orientated. Check your ring gap. You will take these piston rings off. Take that piston with no piston rings on it, push it down in about the middle of the cylinder. Take a filler gauge, and I think mine was 15 thou or 20 thou. Let's see. Take a filler gauge. These are curved, but straight ones are better for this situation. So you find what number it's supposed to be. This one has metric and standard on it, and then you put it in between the piston ring and check the piston ring gap. You'll have a minimum and a maximum. Just make sure it's not too tight, make sure it's not too loose for what you're using it for. If it's just a street motor like this one is, for now, mine came out all right, but just make sure that your ring and gaps are right, that they're not buttoned up. Now if they're too tight, you might have to file them down. They make piston ring filers you can get pretty cheap. Some of them crank, some of them are electric, or you can take a file, but make sure you deburr the edges. You don't want them scraping up your cylinder. Now, it's kind of a pain to do this. There's studs that these things sit on, and on the Lowrider S Softail frame, there is not a lot of room in here. You got to get creative. So I pushed my rod all the way down and kept the piston. I used a piston ring compressor and pressed in through the top, and they'll say cam side, which should be that side, and then rear or front. So as long as it's on the cam side, you know it's orientated correctly. Push the piston down through the bottom until it's sticking out, which, you know, that would be sticking out. Make sure your piston rings don't pop out, and it's close. I mean, your bottom oil rings are about ready to pop out. That's how I do it. But on the back cylinder, you have to keep it pushed up in there to get it in there, and then I set it kind of right in here. I just kind of let it roll over and let it sit on the studs so it don't slide down through, to get your circlip in. And then once it's in, you can kind of walk it down over the studs. That's how I did it. And as you can see, they're on there, looking beautiful as always. S&S makes some really nice products. So now, we've got our head. Also, make sure you put your base gasket on first before you do all that, or you will hate life. This kit came with base gaskets and head gaskets. The head gaskets are a little thick. I'm not loving that. I think they're 60 thou. I don't know what they are compressed. But these will have their MLS gaskets. They're nice gaskets, but they are thick on top. I'd rather have something a little bit thinner, but piston to valve clearance, you know you're going to be cleared of the valves. So anyways, I wrote down the torque specs, like a little diagram. Forgive my writing, I know it looks like a 3-year-old did it, but that's basically how it's done. in the torque specs, which is insane. So in sequence, we got to do 10 foot-pounds, 20 foot-pounds, 30 foot-pounds, loosen each bolt a quarter, do the whole thing again, and then add 25, 30, 35, 40. Basically, you're going up in 5 increments because the squish rate on these head gaskets, they loosen up over time. And then it says to wait another 15 minutes, go over the bolts again, and make sure they're good. To clean up your cylinder heads, like me, I just take some Scotch-Brite and rub it till it's clear, just to smooth out the surface. Don't use cookies, especially on aluminum. It'll just chew them up. Or you can use one of these carbide tip scrapers if you would happen to have one of those, but if not, a piece of Scotch-Brite does wonders. Okay, time for the rear head to go on. Already cleaned it with alcohol. Let's set it on there. And I did have to put the dowel pins in this. They don't come installed. They're super easy to install. Just barely tap them with a hammer. Just don't hand cram them. Okay. And your head bolts. They're all the same length on this here, so the bolts. I'm going to squirt a little bit of oil in these. Just a tad bit goes a long way. You don't want it compressing up in there and not giving you a good torque. That's the last thing you want, especially on one of these engines. Okay. Let's go ahead and put both of them on. There's those springs and retainers I was talking about. They're a really nice spring. I really like them. First time I ever used them. I'm hoping this kit, it should be a good run motorcycle. I've been seeing some numbers on some 132s, and they got some pretty good numbers. Kind of thought they would do more. We'll see what kind of power we can get out of this one after we get a big one intake, because I believe that's what these engines really need. I don't think the intake's big enough. And then at that point we'll have to get bigger heads, because this opening won't be big enough. I could port that and open it up a good bit, but honestly, like some moonshine horsepower, they got some monster heads. I'd really like a good set of those. They figured out how to get them to breathe. Okay, and that's oil. Yep. I use one of these little ketchup bottles for oil. Works phenomenal. They're like $2. In. I wish I could have got ARP for that, but money is always a situation. Okay, wire diagram. So it's going to be 1. I'm just running these down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to do the rest by hand. That way I know it's good. It's a 9/16, 12 point. Yeah, it's 9/16. Yeah, 9/16. So let's, you can use a clicker type torque wrench. I just happen to have this one. I use it every day, all the day, so the digital ones are way more accurate. But you can use whatever you got. Harbor Freight makes a good one. Again, there's one. Two, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next is 20 foot-pounds. Start on number 1. I'm going to move my pliers here. There's some buckets splashing all over my very expensive pliers. That's all it needs to get in the rust. Okay. Those are put back in their spot. 20 foot-pounds. Here we go. 1. 2, rear head. 2, 3, and number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you got any questions, put them down in the comments and I'll answer them the best that I can. I'll help you however I can. Okay, number third one, we need 30 foot-pounds. Back to the rear head, number 1 again. 1. I think I remember these by now. 1, 2. 4. And the fun part is when this thing's done, we're going to get a rip on it. 1. I have to get it done by day because I'm going to run it to work tomorrow. Kind of get her broke in. 2. 3. 4. Okay. Now we're going to loosen each bolt a quarter of a turn. sequence. 1. If you don't know what a quarter of a turn is, it's just loosening it up. 2. 3. 4. 1. 2. 3. There's 4 quarters in a hole, 4 quarters in a dollar, right? So a quarter, a quarter, a quarter, a quarter, 1 quarter. If you don't know. Okay, we're doing our sequences again. Starting over with 10, which I think this is a little excessive. I think you could start with 20 and be okay. But we're going to do it by the book. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll probably have to do this video in quite a few parts. But some of this stuff can get daunting and boring. I'm trying to skip through the main parts. But it should basically show you everything that you need to know. Okay, we're on the 20 foot-pounds. We're ahead, number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4, 5. We're just going up in 5 increments from now on. 5, 1, 2, 3. That's weird. 4. 5. It's not moving much. You're just barely pushing her down. 5 more. Oops, I got beefed up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. And you can feel it squishing the head gasket. Make sure it's a solid torque. This thing vibrates when it's a good solid torque. It might beep, but it won't vibrate if it's not. Sometimes I gotta bump it again. Okay, 35. 1. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 40. Actually, so if you go straight to 45, okay? So from 35, so after you loosen it up, the quarter turn, you go 10, 20, 25, 30, 35, and then you go straight to 45. And that's where we're gonna wait the 15 minutes, and I'll come back to you. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the rest of it is just reversal removal. I'm going to show you how I do the push rods. Since they're not adjustable, you got to run the rockers on it. And it's kind of sketchy. You got to be careful. You want to make sure you're on your base circle of your cam, which you can do with your wheel and turning the motor. You don't want pressure being pushed down on the spring. We'll go over that in just a second. And then after that, just put it back together the same way you took it off. Pretty easy. I'm using some special push rod covers I've never used before, which is kind of weird, but that probably won't apply to you. But we'll be back in 15 minutes.